Shalom, everyone. Welcome, holy adepts and holy initiates. In this video, we're going to dive very deep into some very esoteric and mystical content. This video is part 2 on the complex yet comprehensive process of emanation with respect to Hasferoth. In this video, we are going to illuminate this matter from the perspective of the Lurianic Qabbalah. Of the two main grand systems of Jewish Kabbalah, the first, which is derived from the highest pedigree, is that of Moshe Cordovero. And then the second one is that of Yitzhak Luria. And of these two systems, I feel that it is the Lurianic Qabbalah that does the best job at fully illuminating and explicating the very complex and comprehensive and mystical and esoteric process of emanation. I specifically am referring to the writings of the chief disciple of Yitzhak Luria, which is Hayim Vital, where he is known as Hayim Vital, and in his magnus opus, Eytz Hayim, which is Hebrew for the Tree of Life, he has many sections devoted to this topic. Now, I begin by giving a little introduction into the diagram of Hasferoth. Now, I have already done a previous video that deals in restoring and correcting the true diagram of Hasferoth. So if you haven't seen that video, then I would stop watching this video and go and watch that video before you watch this video. Now, principally, there are two mathematical diagrams of Hasferoth. This is known by all of the ancient Kabbalists. And Hayim Vital, in his magnus opus, Eytz Hayim, actually makes mention that as of recent, within the past 500 years or so, or 800 years, there were many Kabbalists, that is, those who were of a lower degree of initiation and thus ignorant of the full knowledge and wisdom of the diagrams Hasferoth, duly noted that there were indeed two diagrams, and they read, when they would read the principal books of Qabbalah, they would see these sections where some sections would make reference to a circular diagram and others would make reference to a linear diagram, and those who were of a lower degree of initiation perceived this as contradictory in nature, and thus it produced confusion amongst many Kabbalists who were of lesser initiation. And Hayim Vital duly notes this in his magnus opus. And so, principally, yes, there are two mathematical diagrams of Hasferoth. One is circular and one is linear. In this slide, I have provided two pictorials of these diagrams. On the left, you see what is considered the most prevalent circular diagram, which is basically 10 concentric circles, with the first emanation being represented by the outermost circle, and the last emanation being represented by the innermost concentric circle. The diagram on the right represents the correct and restored linear diagram of Hasferoth. Now, again, as Hayim Vital states in his magnus opus, considering he was a highly initiated Kabbalist, only the most fully initiated Kabbalists fully understand this matter. As stated previously, to the profane and uninitiated, this appears to be a contradiction. But as I have stated in previous videos, within the holy kingdom of Elohim, there are no such thing as contradictions. Contradictions are but allusions to the profane and uninitiated who do not know any better and who do not have the keys to divine reconciliation. And so we may succinctly state that in reality, these two opposing diagrams are one of many divine mystical paradoxes. So now I proceed to illuminate what is known in the Lurianic Qabbalah as Zimzum, which is the great divine contraction. And I begin by reading select excerpts from Chaim Vital's magnus opus Eytz Chaim, or Tree of Life. He states, "You should know that before the emanations were emanated, a most supreme, simple light filled all of existence. There was no void or vacuum. Then Ein Sof contracted himself at his midpoint in the exact center of his light, and after he contracted that light and withdrew from the midpoint to the sides surrounding it, it left a vacant space, a hollow void like this." So here we have a diagram of what you can imagine in abstract, a circle with a midpoint, and as Ein Sof contracts himself, you could say that his light moves to the circumference or border of the circle, and everything in between the circumference and the midpoint can be thought of as the void or the vacuum. And so he continues on by saying that the reason for this is that the light of Ein Sof is completely and totally uniform, and so it contracted itself in the form of a circle. And this is why one of the main mathematical diagrams of the Sfaroth is 10 concentric circles. This is why the Sfaroth, which is Hebrew for numbers, are depicted as circles, while they are referenced as the divine spheres, which are circular in nature, because the circle is the most ideal divine representation of divinity. And so this citation that I just read from is found in Eytz Chaim in Gate 1, Branch 2. And again, this goes back to what we read in Sefer Zohar Chadash in Matnit Mim, or our Mishnah, folio 121d, where it states, "Through purity, through the head of the decree of the king, 9 glyphs were engraved in pure revolutions, and one is concealed and unknown." Again, we can imagine, as best as we can, that this emanative process began in a circular nature, and that this divine concealed hidden light of Ein Sof descended in revolutions, thus producing these divine spheres. Now, as I've also stated in a previous video, that there have been many ancient Kabbalists that have briefly intimated and subtly alluded to the esoteric Kabbalah, to the holy mysteries in their writings. One such perfect example is Dionysus the Areopagite, who in the Divine Names in chapter 5 states, the self-existent supergoodness, then as projecting the first gift of self-existent being, is celebrated by the elder and first of the participations, and being from itself is from it as also the sources of things being, and all the things that be, comprehensively and uniformly. For even in a monad, every number pre-exists in the form of a unit, and the monad holds every number in itself singly. And every number is united in the monad. And in the center, all the lines of the circle coexist within one union, and the point holds all the straight lines in itself, uniformly united both to each other and to the one source from which they proceeded, and in the center itself, they are completely united. Now, this is a highly mystical passage in Dionysus's Magnus Opus. The self-existent supergoodness represents Ein Sof. It is a cryptic term or phrase for Ein Sof. And this first projection represents the first emanation, his first emanation, which produces further participations, divine participations, which are the subsequent emanations. Duly note what he states. This process of emanation is comprehensive and uniform in nature. And he gives an example. For just as in a monad, every number pre-exists within it, and it holds every number accordingly, and so every number is united within this monad. Likewise, within Ein Sof, he holds all of the Sferoth. That is, all of the Sferoth pre-exist in Ein Sof before the emanation. And all of the Sferoth are united in their pre-existence within Ein Sof. Again, he uses the mathematical symbol of the circle, its circumference and its midpoint, to elucidate this point. Just as Hayim Vital, the chief disciple of Yitzhak Luria, does in his Magnus Opus. And so thus we can see this very mystical Kabbalistic equation that is both found in the ancient Christian Kabbalah as well in the Jewish Kabbalah, which is its root and foundation and source. And I shall also add that Hayim Vital, in his book, cites this particular citation from Sefer HaZohar, which is that the palaces, in reference to the Sferoth, and what they contain are circles, as one of his proof texts from Zohar that indeed the Sferoth are circular in nature, not that it is needed. And the citation he gives is that it is in Parasha Pekudei, folio 258. However, I have been unable to find this citation in the modern editions of Sefer HaZohar. It is possible that it may exist in the more older editions of Sefer HaZohar, which I have yet to check, but it is to be known that I was unable to find this citation in the entire section of Pekudei in Sefer HaZohar. Perhaps the citation got lost somewhere along the scribal process of Sefer HaZohar. Now we proceed to discuss the linear aspect or foundation of Hasferoth. I have just finished elucidating the circular aspect and foundation of Hasferoth, but as we stated previously, there is also a linear aspect or foundation. So we again read in Hayim Vital's Eytz Chaim. He states, then one straight line extended from the light of Ein Sof, extending from the circle of light from above to below, like this, as I drew here in this diagram. So you can see the midpoint of the circle, and the blue circumference or border represents the light of Ein Sof, and the black inside represents the vacuum that has been created by Zim Zum, or the divine contraction. And what happens is that there is a divine line or measuring rod that descends from the light of Ein Sof to the midpoint. And so continuing, he states, within that empty space, he emanated, created, formed, and made all the worlds. The first concentric circle is Kether. After this, the line continued to descend some more, then spread out and around and became a second circle inside the first one, etc., circling and descending further Sferoth. The aspect that connects all the circles or Sferoth is that thin line extending from Ein Sof and passing through them. This is found in Eytz Gate 1, Branch 2. So the first process after the contraction is that this divine line of measure descends from Ein Sof into the vacuum towards the midpoint and begins engraving these 9 glyphs or Sferoth, one by one. Now I shall also add that there is a very esoteric section in Sefer HaZohar called the line of measure. And it is a very, very complex and comprehensive mystical esoteric section that goes into full detail explaining in more detail what I'm omitting here of this full divine emanative process taking place. Because again, to give this process a full proper treatment is well beyond the ken of this video. This video is simply designed to be an introduction, at the very least. Moving on, I now will summarize the key points of this emanative process that is so brilliantly elucidated and illuminated in Eytz Hayim by Hayim Vital. He states in the same book in Branch 4 of Gate 1, he states, you should know that the first lights, in reference to Hasferoth, that were emanated into that empty space came in by way of a straight line that spread out from Ein Sof that surrounds everything. These lights are an aspect of the 10 Sferoth that are known collectively as Adam Kadmon, or primordial Adam. The 10 Sferoth came out and were revealed first in their circular aspect, which is the lowest aspect of the soul, or the nefesh, of Adam Kadmon. After the 10 Sferoth of Adam Kadmon were first revealed and brought out, 10 more Sferoth came out as the middle level, which is the spirit or the Rach of Adam Kadmon. This linear Adam Kadmon has the appearance of an atom, or human. From the beginning, that line, the form of linear Adam Kadmon, started to extend downward from Ein Sof, piercing and penetrating all the circular Sferoth from their topmost point. So here, what's very nice is that Hayim Vital gives you a very general overall summary, simple summary of this complex and very comprehensive emanative process that represents the initial stages of emanation from Ein Sof.